The wagon wheels creaked through frozen mud as Catherine Dawson pressed her face against the wooden slats, watching her father's retreating figure grow smaller with each turn, until he vanished into the gray winter landscape like smoke dissolving into nothing. She was 20 years old, and she had just been sold to settle a gambling debt for $300 and a lame horse. The February wind cut through the gaps in the wagon's canvas cover as they traveled north from Denver toward the Utah Territory. Catherine pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, but no amount of fabric could warm the ice that had formed around her heart. The man who had purchased her, a cattle trader named Ezra Polk, sat at the front of the wagon, his broad back hunched against the cold. He had not spoken to her since they left Denver 3 days ago, communicating only in grunts and gestures that made her feel less than human. The snow had started that morning as delicate flakes drifting from a white sky, but by afternoon it fell in heavy sheets that obscured the road ahead. Catherine could hear Polk cursing as he urged the horses forward, their hooves slipping on the increasingly treacherous path. She knew they were headed to Ogden, Utah, where Polk owned a ranch. She knew nothing else about her future except that it belonged to a stranger who had bought her like livestock. When her mother died 2 years ago, Catherine had tried to hold her family together. Her father had always enjoyed cards and whiskey, but after losing his wife, he drowned in both. The debts piled up like winter snow until everything they owned was gone. Then he had gambled with the only thing he had left, his daughter. Catherine had watched him make the deal with Polk in a smoky saloon, his hands shaking as he accepted the money, unable to meet her eyes. The wagon lurched suddenly, throwing Catherine against the wooden side. She heard Polk shout, then the sickening sound of wood splintering. The world tilted as the wagon slid sideways, and Catherine tumbled among the boxes and supplies, her head striking something hard. When she opened her eyes, she was lying in snow that had already begun to cover her like a burial shroud. "Get up," Polk's voice cut through the wind. "Wheel broke. We walk from here." Catherine struggled to her feet, her head pounding. She could see the wagon listing at a sharp angle, one wheel completely shattered. The horses stamped nervously, their breath steaming in the frigid air. Polk was already pulling supplies from the wagon, his movements efficient and uncaring. "I said move," he barked when Catherine stood still, trying to orient herself. "Grab what you can carry. Town is maybe 10 miles north, 10 miles in a blizzard." Catherine looked down at her worn boots, already soaked through. Her dress was thin cotton, meant for indoor work, not survival in a Utah winter. But she had no choice. She picked up a canvas bag and began filling it with whatever she could reach. Flour, dried beans, a tin of coffee. They walked for hours. At first, Catherine tried to keep pace with Polk, but he moved with the single-minded determination of a man who cared nothing for the person struggling behind him. When she fell the first time, he did not stop. When she fell the second time, her legs simply refusing to carry her further, he turned back with irritation etched deep in his weathered face. "Worthless," he muttered, grabbing her arm and hauling her upright with bruising force. "Should have known your father's blood would make you weak." Catherine wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but she had no strength left. She stumbled forward, each step in agony, each breath burning her lungs with cold. The wind howled around them like a living thing determined to erase them from the earth. She could no longer feel her feet, and her hands had gone numb hours ago despite being tucked under her arms. When the darkness came, it was almost a relief. Catherine's legs folded beneath her, and she sank into the snow, feeling oddly warm for the first time all day. Polk was shouting something, but his voice seemed distant and unimportant. She closed her eyes and the world fell away. She woke to warmth and light and the smell of wood smoke. For a confused moment, Catherine thought she was home in Denver, that everything had been a nightmare. Then pain flooded back into her extremities, a burning agony that made her cry out. "Easy now," a male voice said, deep and gentle. "Your hands and feet are thawing. It is going to hurt for a while, but that is good. Means you will keep all your fingers and toes." Catherine forced her eyes open. She was lying on a bed covered in thick quilts, in a small cabin with log walls and a stone fireplace where flames crackled cheerfully. A man sat in a chair beside the bed, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. He was young, perhaps 25, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of summer grass. His face was all strong lines and angles, tanned from outdoor work, with a few days' worth of stubble on his jaw. "Who are you?" Catherine managed to whisper, her throat raw. "Vincent Bancroft," he said, and smiled. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges and making him look almost boyish. "Found you and that fellow Polk about 2 miles from my ranch. He was trying to drag you through the snow, cursing up a storm about his bad luck. Brought you both here." "Where is Polk now?" "Barn," Vincent said shortly, and something in his tone suggested he had not been pleased with what he had seen. "He can stay there until the storm passes. You needed the bed more than he did." Catherine tried to sit up, but Vincent put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Give yourself time. You nearly froze to death. Your body needs to recover." "I cannot stay here," Catherine said, panic rising in her chest. "Polk will be angry. He owns me. He bought me from my father." The moment the words left her mouth, she wished she could take them back. Vincent's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. A man cannot own another person, not anymore. The war settled that question. "Not if the person sold is white and poor and has nowhere else to go," Catherine said bitterly. "The law does not care about debts settled between men. Polk has papers. Legal papers that say I belong to him until his debt is satisfied." Vincent stood abruptly, pacing to the fireplace and back. He was tall, she noticed, probably over 6 feet, with the broad shoulders and lean build of a man who made his living through physical work. He wore simple clothes, denim pants and a flannel shirt, but they were clean and well-mended. "Those papers are not worth the ink they are written with," he said finally. "No judge in Ogden would uphold such a thing." "Perhaps," Catherine said quietly. "But Polk is not the kind of man who needs a judge to enforce his will. And I have no money, no family, nowhere to go. What choice do I have but to honor my father's agreement?" Vincent turned to look at her, and Catherine saw something fierce and protective flash in his green eyes. "You have choices. You just have not seen them yet." Before Catherine could respond, the cabin door burst open, bringing a swirl of snow and cold air. Polk stood in the doorway, his face red with anger and cold. "Get up, girl. We are leaving." "The hell you are," Vincent said, moving to stand between Polk and the bed. "Look outside, man. The storm has gotten worse. Nobody is traveling in this weather." "She is my property," Polk snarled. "You got no right to keep her here." "She is a person and she is injured, and nobody is going anywhere until this blizzard passes." Vincent's voice was calm, but Catherine could hear the steel underneath. "You are welcome to wait in the barn. I have already put your horses there and given them feed. But the lady stays here where it is warm." Polk took a step forward, his fists clenched. He was a big man, thick through the chest and shoulders, with the look of someone who had won his share of fights. But Vincent did not back down, and after a long moment, Polk turned and spat into the snow. "This is not over," he said, then slammed the door behind him. Catherine released a breath she had not realized she was holding. "You should not have done that. You do not know what kind of man Polk is." "I know exactly what kind of man he is," Vincent said, returning to the chair beside her bed. The kind who thinks money gives him the right to treat people like possessions. I have known too many men like that. He will make you pay for this kindness. Vincent shrugged. Let him try. Now, you need to eat something. When was the last time you had a proper meal? Catherine tried to remember and realized it had been days. Her father had not wasted money feeding her before the sale, and Polk had given her only hardtack and jerky during the journey. I am not hungry, she lied. You are a terrible liar, Vincent said, and that smile appeared again, quick and warm. I have stew on the stove. My own recipe. Nothing fancy, but it will put some strength back in you. He ladled thick beef stew into a bowl and brought it to her, along with fresh bread that he must have baked himself. Catherine's hands shook as she took the bowl, partly from weakness and partly from the simple, unexpected kindness of the gesture. When she tasted the stew, she nearly wept. It was rich and savory, full of tender meat and vegetables, seasoned with herbs that made her think of summer. This is wonderful, she said, and meant it. Vincent settled back in his chair, watching her eat with satisfaction. My mother's recipe. She taught me to cook before she passed. Said any man who could not feed himself was only half a man. She sounds like she was wise. She was. Tough as nails, too, had to be, raising 4 boys on a ranch. My father died when I was 12. She kept this place running for another 8 years before her heart gave out. I am sorry, Catherine said softly. It was 2 years ago. The grief has dulled to an ache instead of a knife. Vincent was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. My brothers all went east after she died. Cities and opportunities and lives that did not involve waking up before dawn to feed cattle. But I could not leave. This land is in my blood. Catherine finished the stew, scraping the bowl clean. Vincent took it from her and brought her another serving without asking. Where are you from? He asked as she ate. Denver. My father was a clerk before he started gambling. We had a good life once. She paused, the spoon halfway to her mouth. My mother used to sing while she cooked. The house was always full of music and laughter. Then she got sick with fever and everything changed. Grief does strange things to people, Vincent said gently. It turned my father into someone I did not recognize. Catherine set down the empty bowl. I tried to help him, tried to make him see what he was doing to himself, to us. But he was drowning and he pulled me under with him. That was not your fault, I know. But knowing it and feeling it are different things. She looked at Vincent, really looked at him for the first time. His eyes were kind, she realized, not soft but kind. There was a difference. Why are you helping me? You do not know me. Because it is the right thing to do, Vincent said simply. And because I saw how Polk was treating you, dragging you through the snow like you were a sack of grain instead of a person, made my blood boil. Most men would have looked the other way. Then I am not most men. He stood and added another log to the fire. You should rest now. Your body has been through an ordeal. Tomorrow we can figure out what to do about Polk. There is nothing to do, Catherine said, exhaustion pulling at her. He has the law on his side, even if it is a terrible law. I have to go with him. Vincent turned from the fire, his expression serious. No, you do not. I meant what I said. You have choices. We will find them together. Catherine wanted to believe him, wanted to hope that there was a way out of the trap her father had built for her. But hope was a dangerous thing. It made the inevitable disappointment hurt worse. Still, as she drifted toward sleep in Vincent's warm cabin, listening to the wind howl outside, she felt something thaw inside her chest. Just a little. Just enough to hurt. The storm lasted 3 days. Catherine stayed in Vincent's bed while he took the floor near the fire, despite her protests. He cooked meals, brought her water, and changed the bandages on her frostbitten feet with a gentleness that surprised her. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Vincent told her about his ranch, about the 50 head of cattle he was trying to build into something larger, about his dreams of breeding horses. Catherine told him about her mother's garden, about the books she used to read, about her secret desire to see the ocean someday. Polk came to the cabin twice a day, demanding Catherine's return. Each time, Vincent calmly informed him that she was still recovering and could not travel. Each time, Polk grew angrier, his threats more specific. But Vincent never wavered, and eventually Polk would storm back to the barn, cursing the weather and his luck. On the third night, Catherine was finally strong enough to stand and walk around the cabin. Vincent made a special dinner to celebrate, frying steaks and potatoes in his cast-iron skillet. They ate at his small wooden table, and Catherine marveled at how normal it felt, how comfortable, as if they had known each other for years instead of days. "The storm is breaking," Vincent said, glancing toward the window where the wind had finally quieted. "Polk will want to leave tomorrow." Catherine's appetite vanished. She set down her fork, her hands trembling. "I know. I have been thinking," Vincent said carefully, "about your situation, about those papers Polk has. There is nothing to think about. A debt is a debt. What if the debt was paid?" Vincent leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "What if I gave Polk the $300 he paid your father? Then the debt would be satisfied and you would be free." Catherine stared at him, her heart pounding. "That is an enormous sum of money. Why would you do that for a stranger?" "You are not a stranger anymore," Vincent said quietly. "And $300 is not worth more than a person's freedom. I have been saving for years, building up capital to expand the ranch. I can spare it." "No," Catherine shook her head firmly. "I will not let you impoverish yourself for me. That is not a solution, it is just changing who I am indebted to." "You would not be indebted to me." "Of course I would. How could I not be?" Catherine stood abruptly, pacing to the fireplace. "You have already done so much. I cannot accept this." Vincent rose and walked to her, stopping just close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "What if it was not a gift?" he said softly. "What if it was an investment? I do not understand. I need help on the ranch. Cooking, cleaning, tending the chickens, helping with the horses. I have been managing alone, but it is too much work for one person. What if you stayed and worked for me? I would pay Polk to satisfy the debt, and you would work off what you owe me over time. Fair wages for fair work." Catherine looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of deception or hidden motive. She found only sincerity. "That would take years. Then I suppose you would be stuck with me for years." Vincent smiled that transformative smile. "I can think of worse fates. You barely know me. What if I am a terrible worker? What if I cannot do what you need? Then we will figure it out together. Catherine, listen to me." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hands in his. His palms were calloused and warm, strong and steady. "I am not your father. I am not Polk. I am not trying to own you or control you. I am offering you a choice, a real choice. You can stay here and work for yourself, earn your own money, build your own life. Or you can go with Polk and see where that road leads. But the choice is yours. Only yours." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, hot and sudden. She could not remember the last time someone had asked her what she wanted, had treated her desires as something that mattered. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" Vincent's thumbs brushed across her knuckles, a gentle back and forth motion that sent warmth racing up her arms. "Because everyone deserves kindness. Because I know what it is like to feel alone. And because when I look at you, I see strength and courage and a spirit that refuses to be broken, no matter what the world has thrown at you. That is worth fighting for." A tear slipped down Catherine's cheek, then another. Vincent released one of her hands to wipe them away with his thumb, his touch impossibly gentle. "I am scared," she admitted. I know, but fear is not a reason to stop trying. Fear is just proof that you are still alive, still capable of hoping for something better. Catherine took a shaky breath, then nodded. All right. Yes, I will stay. I will work for you and pay back the debt honestly. Vincent's smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. You will not regret this, I promise. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the sky a brilliant blue that hurt to look at. Snow covered everything in pristine white, sparkling in the early light. Vincent and Catherine stood together on the cabin porch as Polk emerged from the barn, leading his horses. About time, Polk grumbled. Get your things, girl. We are burning daylight. Miss Dawson is not going with you, Vincent said calmly. I am buying out your debt. Polk's face went purple. The hell you are. Vincent pulled a leather pouch from his pocket and tossed it to Polk, who caught it reflexively. $300. Count it. That is what you paid for her father's debt. The debt is now mine. Polk opened the pouch, his eyes widening at the gold and silver coins inside. Catherine could see the calculation in his expression, greed warring with anger. This is not proper. I had plans for the girl. Your plans are your problem. The debt is satisfied. You have your money back plus the value of your time. We are done here. I could take the money and the girl, Polk said, his hand moving toward the gun at his hip. Who is to stop me? Vincent's expression did not change, but Catherine saw his body shift subtly, weight settling into his heels, ready to move. I am. And we both know how that will end. Take the money, Polk. Walk away. It is a better deal than you deserve. For a long moment, nobody moved. Catherine held her breath, terrified that Polk would draw his weapon, that Vincent would be hurt because of her. Then Polk spat in the snow and stuffed the pouch into his coat. You are a fool, Bancroft. She will rob you blind and disappear within a month. That is my concern, not yours. Safe travels. Polk mounted his horse, yanking the reins harder than necessary. He glared at Catherine, and she saw pure hatred in his eyes. You will regret this, girl. Mark my words. Then he was riding away, his pack-horse trailing behind, growing smaller and smaller until he vanished over a rise. Catherine felt her knees go weak with relief. Vincent caught her elbow, steadying her. It is over, he said gently. You are safe now. Catherine turned to look at him, this man who had given so much to someone he barely knew. Thank you, she said, and the words felt pitifully inadequate for what he had done. Come on, Vincent said. We have work to do. Those cattle will not feed themselves. Over the following weeks, Catherine learned the rhythms of ranch life. She rose before dawn to cook breakfast, massive meals of eggs and bacon and fresh biscuits that Vincent devoured after hours of outdoor work. She cleaned the cabin, mended clothes, tended the small flock of chickens that provided eggs. In the afternoons, Vincent taught her about horses, showing her how to curry their coats and pick their hooves, how to read their moods and handle them with confidence. It was hard work, harder than anything Catherine had done in Denver. Her hands, soft from city life, developed calluses and blisters that eventually became tough skin. Her back ached from hauling water and scrubbing floors. But it was good work, honest work, and at the end of each day she fell into bed with the satisfaction of having earned her keep. Vincent was patient with her mistakes, never raising his voice when she burned the bread or let a chicken escape its coop. He showed her how to do things properly, then let her practice until she got it right. And slowly, day by day, Catherine felt the ice around her heart begin to thaw. She started to notice little things about Vincent. The way he hummed tunelessly while he worked. How he always made sure she ate before he did. The gentle way he handled the animals, speaking to them in a low murmur that seemed to calm even the most skittish horse. She noticed how his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, how his hair curled at his collar when it needed cutting, how his hands were always warm no matter how cold the weather. One evening in late March, they were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the sun set behind the Wasatch Mountains. The air still held winter's chill, but there was a promise of spring in the lengthening days. Vincent was repairing a bridle, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. "I have been thinking," Catherine said carefully, "about going into Ogden to look for additional work." Vincent's hands stilled. "Why, are you not happy here?" "I am." The words came out more forcefully than Catherine intended. "I am happier here than I have been in years." "But Vincent, at the rate I am going, it will take me a decade to pay back what I owe you. If I could find other work, earn extra money, I could pay you back faster." "I am not concerned about the money, but I am." Catherine turned to face him. "You have been nothing but kind to me, and I am grateful beyond words. But I need to stand on my own 2 feet. I need to know that I can take care of myself." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, studying the bridle in his hands. "I understand," he said finally. "And if that is what you want, I will take you into town tomorrow. But Catherine, I need you to understand something. I do not think of you as someone who owes me a debt. I think of you as my friend, as someone I care about. The money does not matter to me." Catherine's heart did a strange flip in her chest. "It matters to me," she said softly. "My father traded me away like property. Polk bought me like livestock. I need to prove to myself that I am more than that I have value beyond what someone will pay for me. Can you understand?" "I can." Vincent set down the bridle and looked at her, his green eyes serious in the fading light. "But you do not have to prove anything to me. I already know your worth." The way he said it, so simple and certain, made Catherine's breath catch. She looked away, suddenly unable to hold his gaze. "Tomorrow, then," she managed. "We will go to town." Ogden was larger than Catherine expected, a bustling railroad town where the Union Pacific and Central Pacific lines met. The streets were full of people, wagons, and noise. Vincent drove them in his wagon, pointing out landmarks as they passed. The courthouse, the general store, the hotel where important visitors stayed. He took her to a seamstress shop run by a woman named Mrs. Patterson, a brisk widow with kind eyes and quick hands. Catherine explained that she was looking for extra work, and Mrs. Patterson looked her over critically. "Can you sew?" she asked. "Yes, madam. My mother taught me. I can do basic mending and some fancy work." "Show me." Mrs. Patterson handed her a torn shirt and a needle and thread. Catherine set to work, her stitches small and even. She could feel both women watching her, but she focused on the task, determined to prove her skill. When she finished, she handed the shirt back. Mrs. Patterson examined the repair closely, then nodded. "Good work. Neat and strong. I could use someone to help with the mending." "Lord knows I have more than I can handle alone. I can pay 20 cents for each piece you finish, depending on the complexity. You take the work home, bring it back when you are done." "That would be perfect," Catherine said, relief flooding through her. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson." "Thank Vincent here," Mrs. Patterson said with a shrewd look at the cowboy. "He is the one who vouched for you, said you were trustworthy and hardworking. I trust his judgment." As they left the shop with a bundle of mending, Catherine glanced at Vincent. "You came here before today, did you not?" "Talk to Mrs. Patterson about me." Vincent had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "I might have mentioned that I knew someone looking for work. She has been needing help for months." "You did not have to do that. I wanted to help. Is that so wrong?" Catherine stopped on the wooden sidewalk, making Vincent halt beside her. Around them, Ogden bustled with activity, but she was only aware of the man beside her. "No," she said quietly. "It is not wrong. It is kind. You are the kindest man I have ever known." Vincent's cheeks colored slightly and he looked away, suddenly interested in a passing wagon. I just do what seems right. That is what makes you special. You do it without expecting anything in return. They walked back to the wagon in comfortable silence. As Vincent helped her up onto the seat, his hand lingered on hers for just a moment longer than necessary. Catherine felt that touch all the way home, a warmth that had nothing to do with the spring sunshine. The weeks turned into months. Catherine worked steadily on Mrs. Patterson's mending, her pile of coins growing in a tin she kept hidden in her room. She refused to tell Vincent how much she had saved, knowing he would insist it was not necessary. But it was necessary to her. Each coin represented her independence, her ability to provide for herself. The ranch work continued, and Catherine found herself increasingly involved in the outdoor tasks. Vincent taught her to ride, first on his gentlest mare and then on more spirited horses. She learned to rope, to brand, to help with the spring calving. Her body grew stronger, her skin tanned by the sun, her reflexes quick and sure, and somewhere along the way, without quite knowing when it happened, Catherine fell in love. It was not a sudden thing, not a lightning strike or a dramatic revelation. It was gradual, like spring melting into summer. It was in the way her heart lifted when she heard Vincent's boots on the porch. The way she found herself watching him work, admiring the strength in his shoulders and the concentration on his face. The way she wanted to share every small moment with him, every funny observation or interesting thought. She did not tell him. How could she? He had saved her, given her a home and a purpose. She could not risk that by admitting feelings he might not return. So she held her love close and secret, a warm coal burning in her chest. Summer arrived in full force, hot and bright. The ranch flourished under Vincent's careful management. The cattle were healthy and fat, the horses sleek and strong. Vincent hired temporary hands for the big jobs like haying and roundup, and Catherine cooked enormous meals for the crews, learning to manage a kitchen that fed a dozen hungry men. One evening in late July, after the hands had left and the dishes were washed, Catherine went to find Vincent. He was in the barn, tending to a mare who had thrown a shoe. She stood in the doorway, watching him work in the golden light that slanted through the gaps in the walls. "Vincent," she said, and he looked up with that smile that never failed to make her heart skip. "I need to talk to you about something." "That sounds serious," he said, setting down the mare's hoof and straightening. Catherine reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the tin box. She walked to him and held it out. "There is $200 in here. I have been saving every penny from Mrs. Patterson's work and setting aside part of what you pay me for the ranch work. I know it is not the full 300 yet, but I am close. I just wanted you to know that I am making progress, that I will pay you back fully." Vincent looked at the tin box but did not take it. "Catherine, I told you the money does not matter to me." "It matters to me," she insisted. "Please, Vincent, let me do this. Let me finish what I started." He sighed and took the box, weighing it in his hands. Then he handed it back to her. "Keep it?" "What?" "No, I cannot keep it," he repeated firmly. "Save it for yourself, for your future. You have more than paid off any debt you owed me through your work here. You are the best ranch hand I have ever had, and that includes my brothers. You work harder, complain less, and make better biscuits than anyone I have ever known. If anything, I probably owe you money." Catherine stared at him, her eyes stinging. "Vincent, that is not fair. You paid $300 for me." "I paid $300 to free you from a bad situation. That was my choice, my decision. You do not owe me anything except what I pay you for the work you do, and honestly, I should probably be paying you more. I do not want your charity. It is not charity, it is fairness." Vincent took a step closer, his expression serious. "Catherine, you are not indebted to me. You never were, not really. You are free. You have been free since the moment Polk rode away. If you want to leave, you can leave. If you want to stay, I hope you will, but it should be because you choose to, not because you feel obligated. Catherine's hands shook as she clutched the tin box. What if I want to stay? She whispered. Not because of obligation, but because I want to. Then I would be the happiest man in Utah Territory, Vincent said softly. They stood there in the golden barn light, close enough to touch but not touching, the air between them heavy with things unsaid. Catherine could hear her heart pounding in her ears, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She opened her mouth to speak, to say the words that had been building in her chest for months, but before she could, Vincent closed the distance between them. His hands came up to cup her face, gentle and sure, tilting her head back to meet his eyes. "Catherine," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I need to tell you something. I need you to know that these past months, having you here, have been the best months of my life. You are not just a ranch hand or a friend. You are the person I think about when I wake up and the last person I want to see before I sleep. You are the reason I hurry through my morning chores and the reason I always make sure to save the best piece of meat for your plate. I am in love with you. I have been for months, and if you do not feel the same way, I will understand and we can forget I ever said anything, but I had to tell you, I had to let you know." Catherine felt tears spill down her cheeks, hot and sudden. "You love me," she managed. "With everything I am," Vincent said simply. "I love you too," Catherine said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I have been so afraid to say it, so afraid that you would think I was just grateful or confused, but Vincent, what I feel for you is not gratitude. It is love. It is wanting to spend every day with you, wanting to build a life with you, wanting to be the person who makes you smile and takes care of you when you are tired and celebrates with you when things go well. I love you so much it terrifies me." Vincent's smile was incandescent. "Then we can be terrified together." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, his lips warm against hers. Catherine dropped the tin box and wound her arms around his neck, pressing closer, pouring months of longing and love into the kiss. Vincent's arms came around her waist, strong and sure, holding her like she was something precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Vincent pressed his forehead to hers. "Marry me," he said. "Not because of debt or obligation or anything other than the simple fact that I love you and want to spend my life with you. Marry me, Catherine." "Yes," Catherine said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Ogden with Mrs. Patterson and a handful of ranchers as witnesses. Catherine wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, and Vincent wore his best suit, his hair freshly cut, and his face clean shaven. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed her with such joy and tenderness that several of the ladies in attendance wiped their eyes. They held a celebration at the ranch, a barbecue with music and dancing that lasted until well after dark. Catherine danced with her new husband under the stars, his arms around her, his smile brighter than the moon. She thought about the girl who had been traded like property in a Denver saloon, frozen and afraid and certain she would never be warm again. That girl seemed like a stranger now, someone from another life. "What are you thinking about?" Vincent asked, swaying with her to the music. "How different my life is now, how happy I am." "Just wait," Vincent said, kissing her temple. "We are only getting started." The years that followed were good ones. Vincent's ranch prospered, growing from 50 head of cattle to over 300. Catherine proved to have a natural skill with horses, and they began breeding them, producing strong, intelligent animals that sold for good prices. They hired hands to help with the work, building a bunkhouse and expanding the barn. In the spring of 1878, Catherine gave birth to a son. They named him James, after Vincent's father. He was a healthy baby with his father's green eyes and his mother's determination. Vincent was a devoted father, carrying James around the ranch even when he was tiny, showing him the horses and cattle and explaining everything in a low, patient voice. 2 years later, a daughter arrived. They named her Anna, after Catherine's mother. She was quieter than her brother but equally stubborn, and Catherine saw echoes of herself in the way Anna studied the world with serious, thoughtful eyes. Catherine continued her work with Mrs. Patterson, though now it was because she enjoyed it rather than because she needed the money. The two women had become close friends, and Mrs. Patterson doted on Catherine's children like they were her own grandchildren. One evening in late autumn, when James was 5 and Anna 3, the family sat on the porch watching the sunset. The children were playing with a new puppy Vincent had brought home, their laughter bright in the cooling air. Catherine leaned against her husband's shoulder, content and peaceful. "You ever think about that day I found you in the snow?" Vincent asked quietly. "Sometimes," Catherine admitted. "It feels like another lifetime, like it happened to someone else. I think about it often, about how close I came to not riding out that day, to staying in the barn because of the storm, about how different my life would be if I had not found you." Catherine turned to look at him, seeing the love in his eyes, the same love that had been there from the beginning. "I was so afraid back then, afraid of everything, of Polk, of the future, of being hurt again, but you were so patient with me. You gave me time to thaw, to remember how to trust and hope. You did the hard part," Vincent said, taking her hand. "You were brave enough to try again, brave enough to open your heart even after everything you had been through. That takes real courage. I had good reason to be brave. I had you." Vincent kissed her hand, then pulled her closer. The children's laughter mixed with the sound of the wind in the grass, the distant lowing of cattle, the creak of the porch swing. Catherine closed her eyes and let herself simply feel this moment, this perfect accumulation of all the small choices and acts of kindness that had brought her here. "I love you," she said, as she said every day, because she never wanted him to doubt it. "I love you too," Vincent replied, as he always did, his voice warm and sure. The years continued to pass in a pattern of work and joy, challenges and triumphs. The ranch became one of the most successful in the region, known for quality cattle and exceptional horses. Vincent hired more hands and built additional outbuildings. Catherine expanded the garden, planting fruit trees and berry bushes that would take years to mature but promised abundance for the future. In 1882, Catherine gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. They named them Samuel and Elizabeth. The birth was difficult, and the doctor told Catherine she should not have more children. Vincent was terrified of losing her, sitting by her bedside for 3 days until she was strong enough to sit up and nurse the babies. After that, he was even more attentive, always making sure she did not overwork herself, that she had help with the children and the house. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books as much as ranching. Vincent taught him to ride and rope and manage cattle, but he also made sure the boy had access to education. They hired a tutor who came to the ranch 3 times a week, teaching James and Anna reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. Anna proved to be fearless, climbing trees and racing horses, and generally giving her parents heart attacks on a regular basis. But she was also tender-hearted, bringing home injured animals and nursing them back to health with patient care. She had a gift with creatures that even Vincent admired. The twins were only 2 when drought struck in 1884. It was a hard summer, the worst anyone could remember. The grass turned brown and brittle, the creek that ran through Vincent's property slowed to a trickle, and the cattle grew thin despite all efforts to feed them. Many ranchers in the area went bankrupt, forced to sell their land and start over elsewhere. Vincent and Catherine worked from dawn to dusk, hauling water and moving cattle to what little good grazing remained. They sold some of their herd at a loss rather than watch them starve. It was a desperate, exhausting time, and Catherine watched the worry lines deepen on Vincent's face. One night, after the children were in bed, Catherine found Vincent sitting on the porch, staring out at the brown landscape. She sat beside him, taking his hand. "We are going to lose everything," he said quietly. "I can feel it. All these years of work gone because the sky will not give us rain." "We have lost before," Catherine said. "Both of us, and we survived. We will survive this too. I cannot bear the thought of you and the children going without, of not being able to provide for you." Catherine squeezed his hand. "Vincent Bancroft, you listen to me. We have each other. We have 4 healthy children. We have skills and strength and determination. If we lose the ranch, we will find another way, but we will do it together." Vincent turned to look at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "How did I get so lucky? How did I deserve you? You saved me when I was freezing to death," Catherine said simply. "You gave me a home and a purpose and your heart. I think that earns you some loyalty in the hard times." The rains finally came in September, too late to save that year's grass but early enough to prevent complete disaster. They made it through the winter, though it was tight. In the spring, the grass came back thick and green, and the ranch slowly recovered. It took 2 years to rebuild their herd to its former size, but they did it, working side by side, never giving up. In 1890, when James was 12, he saved enough money from odd jobs to buy his first calf. Vincent helped him pick out a good heifer, and James raised her with meticulous care. When she had her first calf 2 years later, James had the beginning of his own herd. Vincent watched his son work with pride, seeing the same determination and love of the land that had driven him. Anna, at 10, announced that she wanted to be a veterinarian. Everyone told her it was impossible, that women did not become veterinarians, but Anna was undeterred. She spent her time shadowing the local animal doctor, asking endless questions and reading every book on animal medicine she could find. Catherine supported her daughter's ambitions fiercely, remembering what it was like to be told you could not do something simply because of your gender. The twins grew into lively, energetic children who kept the household in constant motion. Samuel was adventurous and charming, always getting into mischief, but talking his way out of trouble with an impish grin. Elizabeth was quieter but equally stubborn, with a gift for music that surprised everyone when she coaxed beautiful melodies from the old piano Vincent bought for the house. In 1895, Mrs. Patterson passed away peacefully in her sleep. Catherine wept at the funeral, mourning the woman who had been the first to give her a chance, who had believed in her when she was still learning to believe in herself. In her will, Mrs. Patterson left Catherine her sewing business, the shop, and all the equipment. Catherine was overwhelmed by the generosity, by the trust her friend had placed in her. She continued to run the shop, hiring local women to help with the work and providing jobs for those who needed them. It felt right, carrying on Mrs. Patterson's legacy of giving people opportunities. Catherine thought her friend would approve. By the late 1890s, the Bancroft Ranch was one of the most prosperous in Utah. Vincent and Catherine had built something real and lasting, a legacy for their children and grandchildren. They had weathered droughts and harsh winters, economic downturns and personal challenges. Through it all, they had each other. On a warm evening in June 1900, Vincent and Catherine sat on their porch, watching their 4 children and their families gathered for dinner. James had married a sweet school teacher named Sarah, and they had 2 children of their own. Anna had defied all expectations and was studying veterinary medicine in California, one of the first women in the country to do so. She was home for the summer, full of stories and excitement about her studies. The twins were 19 now, Samuel working the ranch alongside his father and brother, Elizabeth planning to attend music school in the fall. 22 years, Catherine said, watching the grandchildren play in the yard. 22 years since we got married. 23 since I found you in the snow, Vincent added. His hair was gray now, his face weathered by decades of outdoor work, but his green eyes were still bright and warm when he looked at her. You ever regret it? Taking in a half-frozen stranger, appending your life, spending all that money, Vincent laughed, the sound rich and familiar. Not for one single second. You are the best decision I ever made. Catherine leaned against him, fitting into his side like she had done thousands of times before. I was so afraid back then, afraid that I would never be warm again, never be safe, never be loved. And then you appeared like something out of a story, refusing to let me give up. I just did what was right. You did more than that. You gave me back my life. You showed me what kindness looked like, what love looked like. You melted the ice around my heart with your patience and your goodness. She looked up at him, seeing the man who had saved her in every sense of the word. I love you, Vincent Bancroft. I love you more today than I did 23 years ago, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. Vincent kissed her forehead, his lips gentle against her skin. I love you too, Catherine, always and forever. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the Bancroft family gathered around the dinner table. There was laughter and conversation, the passing of food and the clink of dishes, children's voices raised in excitement and adults trying to corral them. Catherine looked around the table at the life she and Vincent had built together. 4 children who were healthy and happy and loved. A ranch that would sustain them for generations. Friends and neighbors who respected them. And at the center of it all, the man who had seen her at her lowest moment and chosen kindness over indifference, love over convenience. She thought about the girl who had been traded away in a Denver saloon, who had nearly frozen to death in a Utah blizzard. That girl had been so certain that her life was over, that she would never be anything more than someone else's property. She had been wrong. Sometimes salvation came in unexpected forms. Sometimes it came in the shape of a cowboy with green eyes and a kind heart, who saw a person where others saw only a transaction. Sometimes it came from being brave enough to accept help, to let yourself thaw, to risk loving again even when you had been hurt before. Catherine reached under the table and found Vincent's hand, lacing her fingers through his. He squeezed gently and she squeezed back, a private conversation that needed no words. They had built this together, from nothing but hope and hard work and a love that had started in kindness and grown into something unshakable. The years continued to pass. Vincent and Catherine grew old together, their bodies slower but their love undiminished. They sat on their porch and watched their grandchildren grow, then their great-grandchildren. They told stories about the early days, about blizzards and droughts, about taking chances and never giving up. In 1915, Vincent fell ill. The doctor called it a growth in his lungs, likely from years of breathing in dust and smoke. There was nothing to be done except make him comfortable. Catherine nursed him with the same determination she brought to everything, refusing to accept that their time together was ending. On a warm September evening, with his children and grandchildren gathered around, Vincent took Catherine's hand one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice weak but clear. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for staying. Thank you for loving me." "I would do it all again," Catherine said through her tears. "Every single moment, you gave me everything." "You gave me more," Vincent replied. Then, with a final gentle squeeze of her hand, he closed his eyes and was gone. Catherine mourned deeply, missing Vincent with an ache that never fully left. But she did not break. She had learned, decades ago, that she was stronger than she thought, that she could survive grief and loss and still find reasons to keep going. She had learned that from the cowboy who had saved her life. She lived another 10 years, running the ranch with her children and grandchildren, maintaining the sewing shop, staying active in the community. She told Vincent's story to anyone who would listen, making sure his kindness and goodness were remembered. She spoke at churches and women's groups about second chances and the power of choosing compassion over cruelty. On a cold February morning in 1925, 47 years almost to the day since Vincent had found her in the snow, Catherine Dawson Bancroft passed away peacefully in her sleep. She was 73 years old. Her children found her with a smile on her face, her hand resting on the pillow beside her, as if reaching for someone only she could see. They buried her next to Vincent on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives they had touched over the decades, former employees who remembered Catherine's fairness and generosity, neighbors who had been helped through hard times, women who had found work and dignity in Catherine's sewing shop, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their legacy forward. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the generations. The Bancroft name became synonymous with integrity and hard work, with treating people fairly and never forgetting where you came from. And at the heart of all of it was a story that the family told and retold, the story of how their matriarch had been traded as snow turned to ice, and how a cowboy had melted her fears with kindness. It was a story about the worst and best of humanity. About how people could be cruel and indifferent, but they could also be compassionate and brave. About how love could grow in the most unlikely places, between two people who had every reason to give up, but chose hope instead. About how a single act of kindness could change not just one life, but generations of lives that followed. In the end, Catherine and Vincent's story was about simple truths: that everyone deserves dignity and respect, that kindness is never wasted, that love, real love, is worth fighting for, and that even in the coldest, darkest moments, warmth can be found if you are brave enough to reach for it. Their great-great-grandchildren still work the Bancroft Ranch today, raising cattle and horses on the same land that Vincent and Catherine carved out of the Utah wilderness. On the mantel in the main house sits a photograph, faded with age, of a young couple on their wedding day. The man is tall and handsome with green eyes and a wide smile. The woman is beautiful and determined, her hand resting in his, their love visible even in the old sepia tones. And if you ask anyone in Ogden about the Bancrofts, they will tell you about that photograph. They will tell you the story of Catherine and Vincent, of blizzards and second chances, of a trade that became a rescue, of ice that melted into love. They will tell you that it is a true story, every word of it passed down through the generations like a precious heirloom, because some stories are too important to forget, some loves are too powerful to fade, and some acts of kindness echo through the years, changing the world in ways both small and profound, reminding us all that we have the power to choose compassion, to offer help, to see the humanity in everyone we meet. That is the legacy Catherine and Vincent left behind. Not just a prosperous ranch or a successful business, but a reminder that even in the hardest times, even when the world seems frozen and cruel, there are still people who will choose kindness. Still people who will see someone in need and decide to help, not because they have to, but because it is the right thing to do. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, that kindness grows into love. The kind of love that lasts a lifetime. The kind of love that builds legacies and changes destinies. The kind of love that proves, beyond any doubt, that hope is never foolish and trust is never wasted when given to the right person. Catherine learned that lesson in a snowstorm 47 years before her death, and she carried it with her every day of her life. She passed it on to her children, who passed it to theirs, and so on through the generations. And that lesson, that fundamental understanding of human decency and compassion, was perhaps the greatest gift she and Vincent ever gave. Their story ended the way all good love stories should end. Not with drama or tragedy, but with a life well lived together, with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with work that mattered and love that sustained them through every hardship. They grew old together, loved each other until the very end, and left behind a legacy that would outlive them both. And on cold February nights, when snow falls on the Bancroft ranch and the wind howls through the mountains, some say you can still feel their presence. Not as ghosts or spirits, but as a warmth that permeates the land, a reminder of the love that was kindled there so many years ago. A reminder that even in the coldest winter, spring always comes. And that sometimes, the best things in life begin with a simple choice to be kind.